Psychologists have found that there are two types of passion. One is really healthy and the other is completely destructive. So the healthy one is called harmonious passion. It's where you want something and you've got intrinsic motivation towards it. It doesn't get in the way of everything else in your life. Whereas the other one, the super unhealthy one, is called obsessive passion. The difference between the two is basically the difference between wanting and needing something. If you feel like you need something, then it becomes an obsession. It becomes something that you become overly defined by. Think about anything in your life. If you feel like you need it to be happy, or if you feel like you need it to be someone, then you're never going to actually find happiness. That puts you on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, where you're constantly seeking the next thing and constantly being let down. So the question that you have to have is, when you're looking at your life and your goals and your objectives, do you need this thing or do you want it? You can be 100% committed to something that you want. You don't have, just because you can get to a place of 100% commitment and it still can be purely out of intrinsic motivation and purely out of want. And let me give an example. I'm completely 100% committed to my wife and to my kids, but it's because I want to be with them. It's not some unhealthy need. If it ever became a place where I needed them to be happy, then I would be putting so much external pressure on them to be something for me that I need to be for myself. A relationship is truly healthy if you're 100% committed to it, but it's purely in a harmonious form, a harmonious passion. It doesn't get to this unhealthy level of becoming an obsession. But instead, you want to be purely intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. There's a lot of research on the theory of what's called self-determination theory. Self-determination theory means you have autonomy. It means you have freedom of choice. And that is very important to motivation. It's also important to choosing your life. It's important having freedom. Actually, in philosophy, they've broken freedom up into two categories. One is that you have freedom from. Freedom from means you're free from certain constraints. You're free from obstacles. You could be free from addiction. The other one is freedom to. Freedom to choose specifically what you want. We live in a world where we have a lot of freedoms from. We have a lot of choices. We can choose what we want. But the question is, do you have the courage to have the freedom to choose what you want? This is a very powerful conversation, and it's something that hit me really hard. I was talking to a friend last night, and I was telling him about my goals, and he helped me realize that with one of them, it was an unhealthy need. It was something that I felt like I needed because I built so much of my identity around it. And it's not that the goal is bad. Actually, the goal is great. It's that I had put it in the category of need, and therefore it became an obsessive passion. And therefore it was not creating freedom in my life, but it was stopping me from being free. You can have the same goal, but it can be purely out of want. And it can be purely intrinsically motivated, and it can be a choice you've made. And so think about your life right now. Think about, what are you pursuing? Is it because you feel like you need it, or is it because you genuinely want it? And that's going to take some hard honesty on your part. Here's how you'll know if it's in the world of need. And here's how you'll know if it's an obsessive passion rather than something harmonious. If it's an obsessive passion, and if you feel like it's a need, it's going to lead you to a lot of unhealthy behaviors. Like attracts like. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you're in the realm of doing something out of need and it's unhealthy and it's obsessive, then you're going to do a lot of short-term thinking to get there. You're not playing the long game. Anything that's ultimately going to create high success and high happiness is always long-term thinking. Harmonious passion is long-term thinking. Wanting is long-term thinking. It's wanting what you want, and it's having a long-term perspective. But if you have an obsessive passion and you feel this need, then you're going to do things that are ultimately destructive to the long term in order to get what you want in the short term. For example, if you're killing your health to get what you think you want, then it's probably an unhealthy obsessive passion. Anything that's contrary to the long-term benefits is going to be in the realm of unhealthy obsessive passion. And that's where you're going to feel like you need it. If you feel like you need something, you're going to ultimately really wreck your long-term future in order to get it. So this is where you want to look at your diet. If you're overly using stimulants. As an example, for a long time I overly used stimulants, specifically just caffeine. But once I was able to shift out of the needing to the wanting and just choosing for myself, being autonomous, having freedom towards what I wanted, having more of a harmonious passion, having more intrinsic motivation, choosing what I wanted and being free from everything else. When you step into that realm of choosing to be free and choosing what you want and playing the long game, a few good things happen. First off, you can free yourself from the things you don't want. You can be more courageous. You can free yourself from the relationships, the situations, the addictions, the habits that you were using to fulfill some need. You can remove all those. You can be free from those so that you can be free to go towards what you really want. And it takes courage. It takes courage. There's going to be a lot of resistance in your life. One of the books that I really love is The War of Art. He talks about facing that resistance. Now, you face that resistance in a few different ways. You face that resistance, let's call it first thing in the morning when you try to get to your work. If you're a writer, it's getting down and getting to business, getting to writing, putting the important before the urgent. But it's also facing the resistance of things that you're procrastinating doing. If you're avoiding doing something, or if you're facing that, if you're avoiding the resistance, if you're avoiding doing something, then you're clinging onto it for some unhealthy need. And so you want to remove those things. I love this quote from Naval Ravikant. Naval Ravikant's this amazing investor, but he says that anything truly good in life and that is successful comes from compound interest. And compound interest requires a long-term effect. So compound interest in relationships, in health, in learning, in business, in anything. Compound interest is the thing that makes it successful, and compound interest takes time. So reading 2 books isn't going to really help you, but if you read a book a week or 10 books or 20 books a year for the next 30 years, there's going to be compound interest. It's just like investing. And so one of the things you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what's the thing that I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Or what do I value and believe in that I could do for the rest of my life? And that allows you to purge out some of those unhealthy needs and some of those unhealthy relationships. And it takes courage. It takes courage to be free from the things that you've been holding on to lately out of fear. And that, if you're holding on to it out of fear, then you're holding on to it in the needy category. You're trying to, you feel like you need it, and you don't. You don't need it. That's the powerful thing. You don't need it. Let me give a few examples. Just recently was able to get rid of a few business relationships that no longer made sense to me, and I had a lot of decision fatigue about those. Decision fatigue means it's still on your mind, it's on the back burner, you've got some internal conflict about it. You want to remove decision fatigue by making a powerful decision, and the decision you want to make is ultimately one based on what you want towards your long-term future. Remove the behaviors, the people, the situations that don't resonate towards your long-term future self. The longer term you can think about relationships, activities, behaviors, the better decisions you'll make in the present. That's why you want to focus on the important over the urgent. If you're so focused on the urgent, you're focused on what you need. It's out of fear, it's out of desperation, rather than out of self-determination. Self-determination is far more powerful. And so these 2 types of passion are very interesting. You've got harmonious and healthy passion, which is based on want, intrinsic motivation, and you've got unhealthy passion, obsessive passion based on need. And it's based on believing that some external thing is going to get you what you want. And it's not. Another thing that Naval Ravikant talks about is that happiness is purely an internal game. There actually is no such thing as external progress. It's all internal. There's no external validation. It's all internal. It's a one-player game. And so you can't actually get validation from someone else. At the end of the day, what other people think of you is none of your business. You have to ultimately do that for yourself. And what ends up happening is that the outside world just becomes a manifestation of what's going on inside. So the more healthy, clear, happy, committed, and true you become to what you want on the inside, the more you'll be able to create harmony on the outside. That's really what the purpose of harmonious passion is all about, is that you've got harmony on the inside and on the outside. Whereas obsessive passion, there's not harmony between what's going on inside of you and what's going on outside of you. You're creating all sorts of conflicts because you're internally conflicted. There's that great quote that says a double-minded person is unstable in all their ways. And so if you have decision fatigue about anything, and decision fatigue means you're still conflicted about it, you're still making the decision, that's because there's some form of resistance. And if you're still holding on to it, it's because there's some unhealthy need that you're trying to make out of fear. Here's the cool part about facing fear and exercising your courage. So in behavioral economics, there's been a lot of research on what's called loss aversion or avoidance aversion. And basically what happens is that when we're thinking about doing something that we really want to do, that's going to take courage. Courage means that there's no guaranteed outcome. Like you don't know if it's going to work. That's why it requires courage. When you're going to face a fear or make a decision, often because we're afraid of loss, we inflate the potential downsides by an enormous amount. And that stops us from taking action because we've inflated all the worst case potential scenarios. And the truth is that whenever you take action almost always, like 99% of the time, the actual downsides are far less than you expected them to be. They're always far less, and you can always figure it out on the other side. And the freedom from all of that decision fatigue, all that noise, all that fear, all that need goes away. And you then are free to go towards what you want, freedom too. And so if you're thinking about eliminating something from your life, even an addiction, one of the things that they say in the addiction world is that one of the reasons people stay in addictions is because that's what's become predictable for them. And if you remove the addiction, you've now inflated the possible downsides. Like, you don't know if you can actually keep your life going because the only thing that's become normal for you is the addiction. And so you think that, as an example, and this was a real thing, when I was doing a ton of writing, I got used to doing it on caffeine, and I developed the belief system that I couldn't actually write at a high level without it. That was a false belief. That was a pure addiction belief. And that's when you know it's an addiction, is when you actually think you need the dang thing. And so a reason why people would stay in an addiction is because they now believe that they actually need it. And again, need and want are two different things. If you can do something because you want it, but not because you think you need it, then you could be in a healthy place. But if you think you need it, then when you remove it, before you remove it, you're going to inflate the downsides. You're going to inflate the downsides, but it's just not true. So if you remove the addiction, you're going to realize you have so much more freedom because you're now free from it, and you can now be free to what you want. The only reason you would keep that thing in your life in the first place is because you felt like you needed it. And that creates obsessive passion, that creates short-term thinking, that creates extreme conflicts in your life, and it stops you from making progress. It creates repetition without progress, is what Stephen Pressfield said. He basically said that's what addiction is repetition without progress, and it creates incapacity as a result. And so that's where you would know if you're in an obsessive passion, is if you're doing something out of need, you're doing it repetitively without progress, and you're becoming increasingly incapable as a result. Harmonious passion is the exact opposite. Self-determination is the exact opposite. You're choosing the better choices that ultimately lead you to compound interest in relationships, in money, in freedom, in knowledge, in health over the long run. And you're doing it because you want to, not because you need to. You're removing the things that you don't want. You're removing the things that you used to hold on to out of fear, desperation, or need, and you're only doing what you want. And you're only creating relationships that allow you, that you want to be in for the long run. That is a powerful place to be. And so anything in your life right now that you're holding on to out of need or fear or worry that you actually feel like you need this thing, that might be the thing to get rid of in terms of addiction, situation. I removed, for example, my literary agent. I felt like I needed her to succeed, and I didn't. I've got the freedom to choose what I want. And so it's being self-determined. It's choosing what you want for the long run and choosing what you feel right about. And it's making choices now. Hard choice now, easy life later. Easy choice now, hard life later. So you want to face that resistance. You want to exercise that courage, rip off that Band-Aid, and be free from the things that are stopping you. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. On this page, you can get access to more Future Self videos. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Have an amazing day. See ya.